Right. So I was born in St Albans, moved to Wales when I was 12. My father was one of the last trained Rolls-Royce and Bentley electrical specialists, and also had a passion for renovating houses. So I don't know why I'm doing that. So we moved to, wow, okay. So we moved to this large falling down house, and although I was only there for 4 years of my life, it was really influential. I really enjoyed being in the countryside and being rural and living in welly boots. That was great. I then went on and did a foundation course at Wrexham, and then moved on to Wolverhampton to do my degree, where I did a major in printmaking, because the printmaking facilities were brilliant. And the painting, just sort of, yeah, I loved the painting, but having all those facilities, just, I had to go and spend my time there, wanted to make the most of it. Once you graduate, you kind of enter that strange world of, well, I've got this degree, what do I do with it? So I set myself up as a business, providing workshops, and I knocked on all the local schools until someone said, yeah, all right, then I'll have you for a project. And I really, really enjoyed doing that for quite a few years. I was also able to produce my own work and sell that. And then, I stood in the classroom delivering another project, and I just thought, oh, I've had enough of this now, and I need to do some of my own work. So I'd been to see some friends and got introduced to Masterworks on my last day, and got chatting with them there, and they said, we had a cancellation, come back in 3 months' time. So I went home and put an application in, and got sponsorship from Wales Arts International, and had a lovely time out there doing, every morning I would get up, go out sketching, and then eventually I took all my paints out, oil painting, and produced over 100 works in the 3 months that I was there. And then every afternoon, once it just got too hot, you just had to go to the beach. It was brilliant. Yeah, let me just, so this is where I'm at the moment. So I love to go out walking. I now live in Cyd-fyw, just between Llangollen Church and Oswald Street, so in the middle there. Walks, gardening, observing, drawing, tai chi, trying to balance all that really. I put in a couple of pieces of older works just to give you a kind of feel of the kind of work that I've done. So some quite tight observational drawings, which then went into doing collagraphs and dry points, and I also really enjoyed etching. And more recently, I've discovered the safe etching, and I've got back into that. After graduating, I met a painter who went to the Slade in the 50s and had some professional practice time with him, and really got into oil painting and did lots of still life oil painting. So, yeah, this is me in the craft centre in Ruthin, where I've worked as a freelance on and off for, since I graduated, 25, nearly 30 years, in the old building and its new, the new build as well. Oh yeah, in 2004 I also received a grant, oh it says form, not from, sorry about that, from the Arts Council to collaborate with 3 other artists from the North Wales area to attend the Manchester Art Fair. And that was lovely to do something collaboratively and not to be pushing something on my own all the time. So we could share the responsibilities, and that's something that I'm quite keen to do again, that sort of thing. There we go. These are some other, I really enjoy pen and ink drawing. I always go back to drawing whenever I'm not quite sure what I'm doing. I tend to go back to drawing, and whenever I go off travelling somewhere, I'll take my sketchbook And sometimes they get put into prints and sometimes they just stay in the sketchbook. So in 2019, I think it was about then anyway, I returned after having a family. I really wanted to refocus my work, so I managed to get on the MA in Aberystwyth. And initially I was taken by the printmaking department, and I thought, oh great, I can re-engage with my print. But hang on, we sidetracked me there. Does this sound like, I hope I'm loud enough for everybody.
Sorry, I was making faces there.
So, where was I? Oh yes, I decided I was going to do print, but actually living over 2-hour drive away, it's not really practical. So after a year, after the first year of the part-time MA course, I transferred and did painting, and that worked much, much better. To give myself a challenge, and also for time restrictions, I introduced acrylics to the work, and I'd really been against acrylics, having loved painting with oils and loved the way that oils move. My introduction to acrylics had been quite a few years ago when it first came out, and they weren't nice. They were really brash, and the colours weren't in keeping with what I was doing. So I wasn't sure whether I was ready to make that transition, but I tried it, and I'm really quite hooked with them now. And I really like it when I go out sketching, the things are dry by the time I get back to the car. So I now have a car that doesn't have paint all over the inside of it. And I used to have these little rigs set up in the boot so I could put all the wet canvases in them to travel them around, because the oil paintings don't dry quickly. The catalyst tool is like a silicone wedge sort of thing. So it's quite different from a brush. It leaves a very different range of marks, and I decided less is more. I'm much better when there's less choice. So I put all my brushes away and decided that I was just going to use this catalyst tool, which I really enjoyed. And the journey from home to Aberystwyth, I decided I wasn't going to drive all the time. It was just too much. And there was a lovely train from Welshpool, which is a 40-minute drive, and then get on the train. And I absolutely loved the train journey. I really miss it, because it just cuts through some fantastic scenery, and brings you out at the Dyfi estuary, and you go along this route where there are no roads. You're right next to the water's edge. At high tide, it is almost scary. And you get to see the landscape in a way that other people don't really get to see it unless you go on the train. So that was lovely. And the MA got me out painting again. I've been doing quite a lot of still life stuff, so it got me outside, back in the landscape with my sketchbooks. These ones are actually oiled before I converted to the acrylics, which is obviously, with having to commute and take the work down to show my tutor, that worked a lot better. I just couldn't really do it with oils. How am I doing for time? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I decided to work much smaller, so these are actually 13 centimetres square. So I was on a residency, concentrating on my work, and reduced the size down because of it needing to be portable. But also, I really liked the square format from having discovered Instagram. And that photograph, I liked that square format, so I thought that's something else that I'm going to try and standardise and really work with. So I ditched the brushes. I was working with acrylics, and also a transparent medium with the acrylics. So instead of having opaque colours, I was working with the transparency and layering it up, and working with this very small small stage. I'm a real habit of overworking things. So I had big sheets of paper and then I had 6. So I'd work, go out sketching, come back, or sometimes I'd take it all out with me. And then have 6 pieces on go at the same time so that I could tweak them and change them, but also let them dry properly and keep those colours fresh. It's somewhat reminiscent of the printmaking as well, because you have a plate, and I very rarely inked my plates up the same every time because I wanted to see what else could come from that plate. I was never really interested as a printmaker in making big editions of anything. So there are crossovers between my painting and my print all the time. Whilst I was doing this landscape, fresh look at landscape with a different medium and this square format, I looked out the window and saw this balloon floating down my valley. So I noticed later that evening on Facebook that people had taken photographs of it. So I commented and said, does anybody know whose this is? Because I'm actually painting this area, this is my home area, and I want to know, if they got any pictures or anything like that to see it from a different perspective. And I got to have a ride. So it was just amazing. I was so pleased. It wasn't straight away. He said, have to wait for the winds to be in the right direction and all that. But and it really changed because it made me realise it's as well as the land, it's the relationship between the sky and the land. And actually, the sky is for a time became really, really important.
So you're in the sky.
Yeah, when you're in it, I thought I would notice the land more. Actually, I was looking at the sky, but I did really love seeing the tracks. So when you're on the land, you can see like hedges and hills and a few tracks. But when you're above it, you see a lot more rabbit tracks and animal tracks, but also like the little flooded areas, which you wouldn't have noticed. It was great. So it was a bit scary going up because I was thinking, oh my God, there is no safety here. So there we go. Love life drawing. I popped this in because, just to remind me of the drawing materials I like to use, and it helps to be sort of spontaneous and to react very quickly. So really privileged in this session because we had a dancer as a model for us, and she did this series of movements where she'd be stationary for a very short time and then move and then was stationary again, and it was all to music. It was quite emotional. It was really, really good. It was one of those experience things. I loved it. So I'm looking forward to those starting again at some point. This is where I live. This is my view. The landscape. So, since COVID, and we've had all this sort of, your world has shrunk and you couldn't go so far. It just became much richer. I explored where I live more, and there are so many challenges out there for me to explore. There are different areas, different perspectives. I've not just gone walking over new fields, I've gone and done a bit of cycling as well and explored those routes and to get different views. And the sunsets are just amazing. So my studio is currently the spare room in the house, or the spare sort of dining room it would have been, with a bay window. And I do find myself very distracted and looking out a bit too often. So my new studio is not going to have any windows. It's a World Heritage Site and an area of outstanding natural beauty. And there's currently a project called Our Picturesque Landscape. And it really got me interested because I was reading about what they were doing and what they were planning to do. And it just got me thinking about what does picturesque mean, because one person's picturesque is not somebody else's picturesque. And at what stage in history are they looking back to represent? Because it's the World Heritage Site of the Brogarwch Aqueduct, which was all put there by the Industrial Revolution and all the businesses that came up from that, which have gone now. But you can see, because I've done quite a few studies of the area, and I've done a couple of community murals, so I have to do the history research, and there are banks that once you start to realise, oh my goodness, that whole hill was man-made. The lead up from one end of the canal, from the Bronze side, there's a massive bank, and it was all hand moved by like wheelbarrows and stuff. It was one of the biggest land move works at the time anywhere in the world. And during its construction, only one person died. Yeah.
That's quite good.
Yeah, so it's so long ago. So also the whole idea of what we look at as landscape and what we see as countryside, I've started to realise it's not that romantic countryside that I assumed it was. A lot of it is farming, and some of it is almost like a countryside factory. It's a production site. It's part of a process. It's part of a production, and it's not natural. It's been manipulated by us considerably, and yet we've grown so used to seeing it, and it's so different from townscapes that we consider it to be countryside and rural and untouched, and it's not necessarily. So lockdown happened and everything stopped, and it all got really wonderfully quiet, and I was really happy, and I just ditched anything that I didn't think was necessary, and I thought, what do I need to do to just get to the next day? And had this great urge to put up the greenhouse, which someone had given me and had been stuck in the shed for a year, and start planting. I'd always wanted to do a lot more vegetables, so I started doing that. And I faced some of my technical challenges by volunteering to set up a Zoom class for my Tai Chi group. And that was amazing. That was really, really good. So 18 months later, I still do it online, but we do meet back once a week. So that's pretty good. Vegetables I've been growing. But it also got me to slow down. The slowing down was a really important part of the part of COVID, and I really appreciated that time to reflect and to sort of reboot, really, because we have lost. I personally felt that I'd lost a little bit of connection with being outside, and I spend quite a lot of time being outside, so I'm quite concerned the amount of stuff we do indoors, and that there is stuff that we need to be outdoors. I'm quite happy that, or see it as a positive, that more people are spending time outside now. And just time to notice things that I hadn't really noticed before, and really being really grateful for being able to go for a walk and see frosted spiders' webs and notice seeds creating little hearts, and generosity of nature. I'm sorry, I've got the black and white photographs are not mine. That's an oversight. I was using things from the garden because I couldn't go too far to get back into drawing whilst I worked out where I wanted to go with things. I do still want it to be landscape based, but my idea of landscape is changing. So I started from home, and then got slightly wider. Yeah, so I was thinking about how everything is changing, and the sense of place adjusts with your sense of purpose, and just ebbs and flows like valleys do. There are those times where it's really rough and it's really busy and it's frenetic, and then other times where it's just calm and peaceful and almost boring, and then it all goes mad again. So I'm looking at my practice, recognizing that I tend to work in bursts, and making sense of the things that I've done before and the things that keep coming back, trying to identify those things that keep coming back. And then also identifying those peripheral skills, which I've really enjoyed doing, like the planting and something I haven't mentioned is I've developed an interest in permaculture. So I've been reading not just about the gardening side of things, but also the kind of philosophy of the permaculture and the no-dig ideas, and also foraging and trying to be a little bit more sustainable. Really interested in compost. I've got about 10 compost bins on the go with various different ingredients. And looking at land and land use and how I live and use the very small land space that I call home and the wider landscape of my community. Really enjoying looking at that and from a slightly different perspective. I think that is the end. So there we go. I was considering about the work and the climate emergency and what can I do, how it all fits in. So that's part of why I wanted to be involved with the project, to meet other people and have the discussions about, I suppose, contextualising the work. You know, I suppose having some feedback from other people as well as my own ideas.
Right.
Thank you.